Since making our first public address, a lot has taken place through my interaction and meetings with business owners, nonprofit agencies, and with Oneonta's residents. Through much discussion, there has been a tremendous amount of support for our efforts in this election. For that, I, and the unifying Oneonta Party, would like to thank each and every person for their encouragement and for their time. As I said in my previous address, it is the people who are the face of Oneonta. If elected officials are the voice of the community, the people are the heart that keeps the community beating and alive. In this segment, I would like to break down my first public address to give further details supporting my statements. To begin, I will address my statement concerning individual talents and coming together as a community to push forward into a prosperous future. Whether we want to admit it or not, there is friction between the year-round residents and the student population. As of now, most students feel neglected by the city and that potential legal actions being discussed are targeting college students specifically, while the community feels disrespected by the students and their behaviors downtown. However, the community does rely on both colleges for economic purposes, as the students rely on the community for their academic and social inspirations. Instead of looking at each other as a burden or as a means to an end, we need to increase our communication through public forums and meetings to address the issues that stand before us. Only then can we truly acknowledge and respect each other's views and come to a compromise or find a solution. The main ingredient to any recipe for success is education. Oneonta is fortunate enough to have two major academic institutions within our reach. Because of this, the community has the professionals, the professors, and the specialists needed in order to create a stronger community economically, politically, and socially. By addressing our concerns, we can then create an open channel of communication. By creating such communication, we can then work together and again, harness our talents into our harmonious wave of unity, which will lead to prosperity. One of our main concerns in this community is student retention. Through numerous articles and letters printed in the Daily Star, Oneonta's lack of student retention needs to be addressed and responded to. I believe that once we create an open channel of communication, we can then begin to resolve this issue. My plan is to create specific career fields that cater towards specific majors. By creating jobs that cater towards specific individuals and their talents, we are giving our graduating students incentives to stay and apply the same skills that Oneonta has invested in them. For example, Oneonta has a limited amount of retail distribution. However, we are fortunate enough to have academic institutions in Oneonta that have fashion industry programs. With this, we can create outlets that see the year-round residents manage and oversee the day-to-day transactions while utilizing the fashion industry majors by having them create and market their own products. For the residents, this creates key jobs. For the students, this allows them the opportunity to challenge themselves and their work. This also helps build the foundation for a strong resume and helps to improve the relationship between both parties, as fashion is our unspoken culture. Overall, by creating jobs and businesses, we are creating tax revenue, which again is good for the city and for the taxpayers. This is just one example of how we can utilize specific majors to retain the graduating population. I will address more as time goes on. When discussing each party's role in the community, it is important that we hold each and every group accountable and responsible for their actions. In my last speech, I first addressed the students, as the student population must be aware of their actions concerning the residents and their property. It doesn't matter how old one is, what their experience is, or what title one holds. Everyone can appreciate the fact that each and every one of us deserves a right to peace and quiet in their homes without fear of their property being damaged. From this, I discussed the police and their tactics. While I may have come across as resistant, I have to say that I believe the police are largely responsible for the crime reduction that has steadily taken place over the last 10 years. For this, I commend their efforts and I respect their duties. However, there have been numerous complaints made by both the students and the residents regarding the police and their behaviors at times. I myself have witnessed on several occasions a few people who have chosen to abuse their position of power. From holding citizens in cells without reading them their rights, without giving them a phone call, or actually making any legal charge, to harassing a few who have publicly voiced their concerns, I am not naive enough to believe that this issue has not been blown out of proportion, but I am also reasonable enough to understand when enough people address the same concern, there must be a real issue taking place. As for the city government and their mismanagement of several businesses and the overall economy, there are specific examples of how this administration has overlooked key transactions that have significantly affected the taxpayer. The first example is with the Oneonta Dance Center. In December of 2008, this studio had gone 8 consecutive months without paying its rent, and eventually, owed the city $20,650 in back rent. When members of the Common Council, the city's finance committee, and the current mayor, John Nader, were asked how this could have happened, there was an enormous lack of response, with Nader being quoted as saying, "I don't have any explanation for it at this point." The city's finance committee chairman also said he did not know the studio owed that much in back rent. With this, we can clearly see how our government has overlooked critical transactions within our community. We cannot move forward into a prosperous future if we are not aware of our current surroundings. It is the government's duty to oversee all business transactions concerning the taxpayers. The fact that the studio had gone on for more than half a year without paying its rent, combined with the fact that when addressed, our administration had no reasonable excuses for not dealing with this issue, demonstrates to us that their focus is not in line with its people. This is just one example of how our city government has mismanaged our businesses and our overall economy, and I will list and explain more as time goes on. It is essential that our government is transparent in its actions and its intentions. The Common Council and the mayor were active in addressing residents without valid certificates of compliance for the rental properties. Last October, the city printed a list citing 545 of the city's 955 residential rental properties that lacked valid COCs. However, only when a Freedom of Information Law request was submitted by the Daily Star did the public find out that several aldermen and John Nader's brother-in-law were also included on this list. Alderman Eric Miller was one of the residents cited on this list of non-compliant property owners, and when addressed for answers, he stated that, "The way the regulation is written, I'm as guilty as the next guy." This might have sufficed had he and the other members of the Common Council addressed this issue before this information was retrieved. And again, this information was only brought to the public's attention after a Freedom of Information Law request was formed, not before. With this, you, the taxpayer, must ask yourself a few questions. 1. Why were my elected officials not open to the public with their non-compliance violations, and why did they only address the issue after they had been discovered and not before? Secondly, how come more than half of the city's residential rental properties are listed as being without valid COCs? Does this mean that the government rental permit process is filled with too much gray language and isn't clear? Does this mean that our administration is not managing our codes properly? After discussing this issue with numerous residents, we find it hard to believe that so many people can be listed as making the same mistake without some responsibility resting within our administration. This is what I mean when I say that our government has mismanaged our overall economy and that it needs to be transparent in its actions and its intentions. Continuing on, it is essential that we as a community invest in green energy initiatives. I have already spoken with numerous solar panel agencies, and after comparing prices and finding out more about timelines for positive feedback, we can see a relatively cheap, affordable opportunity that needs to be exploited. By utilizing the sun's energy and placing solar panels on municipal and public buildings, we can significantly reduce our dependency on natural gas and fossil fuels, saving money for the city, which then saves money for the taxpayers. In addition, it is essential that we defend our health and our safety now rather than later. What I mean by this is that right now, the fertilizers and nutrients that we are placing in our soil, their chemicals are going into our waterbed. While this is not significantly affecting us today, the day that we are without clean water is the day that we will wish we had acted sooner instead of reacting later. We can see across the country hundreds of small communities moving toward this great opportunity, and we need to do the same, as this one initiative alone can protect our health, our safety, create jobs, and save money for the taxpayers. Now that sounds like a great opportunity for Oneonta. In conclusion, we can see a variety of positive outlets in taking these steps. By bringing together the local and student residents in an effort to create jobs and retain the graduating population, we're developing our business, our economy, and generating revenue for the city and its people. By holding all parties accountable and responsible for their actions, we can begin to reduce the tension between the town and gown and begin to truly come together as a community. By bringing together our professionals, our professors, and our specialists, we can truly move forward, as we will not have to waste our time, our energy, and most importantly, our money on petty differences. By holding our government and its elected officials responsible for their actions, we can strengthen our economy, our political structure, and our social networks. By properly managing our businesses, we can continue to generate earned revenue for the city, which again saves money for the taxpayer. Finally, by developing green energy initiatives, we can invest in our health and our safety, create jobs, and again, save money for the city. These are just a few concerns that need to be addressed. Through communication, we can set the table for compromise so that all parties involved in this great community are heard acknowledged, and respected. Through compromise, we can meet each other's needs and desires in order to create a stronger Oneonta and drive ourselves into a prosperous future. To find out more information or how you can be a part of this campaign, please visit www.unifyingoneonta.com, where you can contact me directly through my personal email and find out how you can get involved or donate. Thank you. My name is Jason Corrigan, and I wish the best for you, for our community, and for our future. Have a good day.